Hey Predators, we're back again on this bow rebuild project. So if you didn't see the other video, go check it out up here in the corner. But what we're doing today is we are going to finally start rebuilding the Martin Max 33 bow that I had. I had a critical failure on the limb, and it made it to where I had to basically almost start from scratch and rebuilding this thing. While I had everything apart, I decided to go ahead and take it apart, and we are going to Cerakote the paint and going to replace this factory camo pattern. So what we're going to do first is we're going to have to remove the wooden grips from here. Then we're going to remove the Martin and the Max logos from it, so that again, whenever we put the paint on there, we're not painting over anything like that. So once we do that, then what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to go through and strip and sand and clean this the best we can and make it look really good. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to kind of shape this grip a little bit better to make it fit my hand. Then we're going to go ahead and again, we're going to go strip it, and we're going to bake it in the oven. And that's going to help do a gassing process, where basically it's going to release any oils or anything like that that are trapped inside the metal here. Then we're going to wipe it down with some alcohol, hang it, and we will paint it after that. So the colors choices that you guys voted on, there was 2 people who responded to this. I know we're still growing this channel here, but you know, keep liking and subscribing to the videos. And if you haven't already, go ahead and do that right now. But 2 people have responded, one through Instagram and via personal message or private message, and basically it seems like we had 2 colors that came out. There's an OD green and the coyote color. So what we're going to do, we're going to do both. I'm actually going to try to paint a custom camo pattern on here by doing both the coyote and the OD green. We're going to mix it with the black limbs and see how it comes out. So again, appreciate you guys tuning in. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get started on this project. I do have to apologize for me sweating profusely. I had to close my garage up here in the summer in Houston, and right now the locusts are going crazy outside, so if you hear that noise in the background, I apologize in advance. But without further ado, let's get started.
So what we're doing here is we wanted to remove the wood panels from the bow without damaging them. So these little wood inserts are really nice. They insert these into the grip into a lot of their bows from 2018 and up. I think all their bows, in fact. And basically what it is it's a little bit of a piece of Martin's heritage. So, you know, Gail Martin started the company Martin Archery, and whenever he did, the main thing that they focused on was the recurve bows. So what they did here with these current compound bows is they put a little piece of this wood, this little grip insert here, is actually wood from their recurve bows. So eventually what I do is I take this and I stain it a little bit and I reinsert it into the bow. I was kind of deciding whether I wanted to keep it at first or not, but I definitely decided that yes, I wanted to keep it on there. So I just use a little flathead screwdriver here and just kind of gently pry at it. I don't want to put too much pressure on it and break it, so I was kind of gentle with it, and you can see that the glue releases fairly easily on there. Once I put it back in there, I did the same thing. I just inserted some Gorilla Glue, or basically a one-step epoxy in there, and it glued it right back in place with no issues. I did stain these again, so I wanted to kind of give it a little bit darker wood color to match, or to kind of contrast from the color that I ended up choosing to paint it or to Cerakote it in the end. So these are the original limbs with the trees in early season camo. I decided to change those over. They have a 71 deflection, which is the number they give for it. And then these are the new ones for the 2019 Max, and they have a 36 deflection on them.
One thing I really noted that I was really amazed at how much how much quieter they make these bows. So basically, with just a plain aluminum riser here, you can see that it's actually got quite a bit of resonation in it, I guess it's so it resonates quite a bit. And so what was really interesting is whenever I took these dampeners out of here, there's 2 of them, there's one on each side, how much the bow actually resonates. So you know, of course, when you add the limbs and you add all the other different things to it, under the tension, it's not going to vibrate as much. But whenever I take these out, I mean, you can hear how much different, how much that resonates.
Okay, so the next step here was I wanted to kind of shape this grip a little bit. It was kind of a deep grip, and it felt a little off in the hand. Also, it was a little bit wider than what I really wanted to. I tend to like a really thin grip that you know, it kind of just feels like my hand's settling on the edge there. So this it had two kind of things wrong with it that weren't really wrong. I guess it's just a personal preference. And so one of the things was that, like I said, the grip was really deep. And so that right there where I'm hitting it with the sandpaper, it felt like it was kind of hitting the top of my hand a little bit too much for my liking anyways. So the other thing was again that it was a little bit too thick, so it felt like it was kind of spreading my fingers apart between my thumb and my index finger. So again, I just wanted to thin it out a little bit, just kind of slightly customize this to my hand. Now, one thing to note is whenever you're doing this, you definitely don't want to cut too far in there. You don't want to cause a weak point in there. So I was being almost probably a little too gentle with this and this process, you know. I was being a little bit too easy on it. I could have taken a lot more material off and moved a lot faster with this, but as you can see, as I proceed along, you know, I took my time and I really took it slow. I'd start with the fine sandpaper, step it up a little bit to some fine, you know, a little bit finer tools, you know, using that I went to a Dremel to kind of take off a little bit more material as I went. Even with the Dremel though, I was using just a polishing tool so I can kind of smooth it out. I wasn't really hitting it really hard with like a sanding drum or anything like that. I was kind of babying it a little bit, probably a little bit too much. But overall the results were, even though they were slow coming, like I say, I was working on this for almost 2 hours or so. Even though the process was very slow, I'm kind of glad that I took it slow there. I also went and kind of sanded down the belly of it a little bit. The grip had a little bit of a belly to it. I kind of sanded that out again. I wanted it to be as straight as possible in the grip itself, and then you know, kind of shallow on the top. And this is the way I did it, just to kind of take my time with it and you know, take it easy. So as you can see here, next I took the polishing wheel of the Dremel to it, and again, this did not take off nearly as much material as I can, but this really illustrates something that's very important, is make sure you wear your safety gear, right? About somewhere in here. I put on, you know, a mask so I didn't breathe in any of the shavings, and I also put on some safety glasses to make sure that I was super safe, because what ended up happening was this Dremel tool ended up breaking, I guess you'd say, and it like literally threw a big that whole sanding or that whole polishing wheel off of the Dremel. So after all that, I ended up changing over to a stone bit, and this kind of, it was a little bit more aggressive, but still not super aggressive. It wasn't as much as the little drum sanding wheels that come with this. So again, another step in that direction. And then after this, I just ended up switching to doing some filing work, and the file was really good at smoothing it up and taking off a little bit of material so that it fit better in the hand. So then obviously I hit it with some more sandpaper again to smooth it back out and to kind of see. I'd hold it in my hand after doing a little bit of work and then see if it fit. If it didn't, then I'll go back to it. Right there where I'm filing right now, you can see, it's hard to see right here, but I was kind of hitting it more on the edges because there was actually kind of a dip in there. And so what I did is I would hit it kind of with a, on the rounded pieces, I would hit it with a round file, and then on the flat pieces I would hit it with the flat file. So again, I was using small files here to just take off a little bit of material time and really give it the shape I wanted. So this is sped up 500%, so you can see that it definitely took a long time and a lot of work to get this to where I needed it to. And I definitely agree that I could have gone a little bit more aggressive with it, but I think it's something like this. If I had messed up that riser, this whole project would have been in the trash, the whole bow would have been worthless. And so again, I wanted to take it nice and easy and take it nice and slow so that I didn't really mess up the bow or anything. I did get aggressive with it a few times with these files because I could see that I wasn't getting the change that I needed to. But again, I was taking off very, very little material at one time. Given, again, this riser is made out of aluminum, and so, you know, the temptation for me was to not take it very hard, but it is definitely a very, very hard aluminum, something that's, you know, it's not your typical aluminum, even though it's like a cast aluminum, or machined aluminum, I mean, but it's made out of a very solid block. So here's the kind of the end product with that. You know, you can see I feel in my hand, I feel a little bit better. It still does hit the top of my hand just a little bit, but I like it a lot better than it was before. So here's the paint that I used. It was an Coyote tan and an olive drab, or actually it was a jungle green color. These worked out really great. I do wish I had laid in this jungle color a little bit thicker. I think it would have laid a little bit better, but it worked out pretty well. All in all, I'm happy with it. This was the epoxy, or the paint remover, that I used to help remove the stuff. As you can see, and after this is about working for 5 minutes. After about 5 minutes, it was already starting to come off. And it's not that it was painted on there. The camel pattern is actually kind of a dip process, or it's like a thing that was laid over the top of it. But this epoxy remover worked really well to remove it off. You can see right there how it's got the kind of the flaps and folds and stuff, and so it ate through that stuff really well, and it did no damage to the aluminum, which is great. So in between, after I'd take out a little bit, I'd kind of hit it with the sandpaper to help remove some of the things off. That I would definitely neutralize the acid, or the remover in the first before I would hit it with sandpaper, but I would kind of help work that into the grooves and everything to help that. After I finished cleaning it all off, I ended up using this right here, which is some denatured alcohol, and that's just to clean all the residue off of it before I baked it or gassed it in the oven, and use that also to right before I painted it, to make sure it was super clean. The other thing that's important about using that denatured alcohol is that after you gas it, you might have removed some oils and things like that from the metal and everything whenever it bakes out of it. So definitely make sure you use this very well, and it'll help yield better results. So again, this is about 5 minutes into that treatment, you know, spraying it with the remover. You can see everything's bubbling off a little bit more. So what I would end up doing is I would let it sit, and I'll kind of like start scraping at it a little bit while it was treating, to help kind of work it in and try to remove some of those hard to get areas, like inside those little holes and things like that. So this right here, this is after whenever I started doing that. So I would kind of work this tool in those grooves and things like that, and you could see it coming off. It's kind of peeling off, which shows that it's probably more of a dip than it was a painted process, obviously. So that dip, those layers just kind of start sheeting off like this, and so I'd kind of use a tool to help peel them off while it was still wet with the paint thinner. And all in all, it took about 3 coats or 3 treatments of the paint thinner in order to get it all off. So I kind of get those big chunks of stuff. This was, again, the first step, and so I take a lot of these big chunks off with this tool. This is just an Allen wrench. You can use whatever you want, but I would kind of scrape those big chunks off with the tool here, and then I would use water to kind of neutralize the acid on there so I didn't burn my hands, and then I would go back and you know, let it dry, or dry it with the towel, hit it with the sandpaper just a little bit to make sure that I really get in there and kind of work all that extra adhesive or whatever that is. It's kind of like mossy looking stuff on there. Make sure that I kind of work that off a little bit, and then I would spray it down again with the paint thinner, the paint stripper. So this is the aftermath of that first time. Like I said, I make sure I neutralize the acid so I could hold it here, and then you can see there's still some of that kind of undercoat, or if it's whatever part of that dip or whatever the process is. But anyways, it didn't all come off. And so what I wanted to do, this is the parts that were really well bonded. So I kind of hit them with a little bit of sandpaper, and then again I sprayed it again with the stripper in order to help kind of remove the rest of that stuff. All in all, I did about 3 treatments of the paint stripper, the paint thinner on there, to remove all of this stuff, all this epoxy or dip or whatever it is that the wrap that they put on there. And it all came off pretty well. When I was completely done with all that, I made sure to kind of clean it down really well with the denatured alcohol, again, to remove any of the oils or anything like that, any of the stuff that might be in there from that paint stripper. And then once I'd done that, then it was off to the oven to bake it. So here it is coming out of the oven. I baked it for 300 degrees for 1 hour. Alternatively, you can also do it at 250 or 200 for about 2 hours, and that'll help a little bit. 200 you might want to do for 3 hours. But anyways, what that does is kind of opens up the pores of the metal and lets all the grease and stuff like that out of there. So any kind of oils or residues or anything like that that might affect your paint finish in the end will come out whenever you bake it in the oven. So after you bake it in the oven, just make sure you wipe it down with alcohol and it should come out very well. So this part I was just going to talk about, you know, shaking the thing. Make sure you mix it very well. Shake it at least for 5 minutes. I had to re-record the audio here because there was a fan blowing. I already had my ventilation going, and so it did not. Audio came out pretty poorly. But basically, yeah, shake it for 5 minutes and make sure that all the different pieces of the paint mix together. It's kind of got like an oily residue plus the paint dye in there. So definitely make sure you shake it for at least 5 minutes, and you'll have the best results with it. With the Cerakote also, I mix it with a 12-to-1 or a 10-to-1 ratio, which is going to make the finish a little bit harder, but it's also going to be a little bit shinier, which I'm okay with. Also, make sure you use a filter whenever you do it. So mix up the paint inside there, add your hardener to make it to that 12-to-1 or 10-to-1 ratio, and then filter it through this before you actually put it inside your spray gun, or else it could cause clogs, it could cause spattering and things like that. So use a filter. Apply it pretty liberally. A couple times I almost got a little too close to the part here. This paint, though, definitely make sure you use lots of ventilation, because it does create quite an odor, and it also does spray, you know, big particles and everything everywhere. So make sure you're kind of doing it out in the open. I was at the edge of my garage here, so the paint could kind of freely blow out the door and not get on any of my cars or anything like that, so it wasn't really an issue. Also had a fan or two blowing in there to kind of help blow it out the door, because again, this paint kind of, it stinks. It smells like an old warship or something like that. If you've ever been like on an old battleship, it's kind of what it smells like. But anyways, you spray it on there, the Cerakote on there. Again, what I have to do is it sticks pretty well, but what you'll find is sometimes that it will kind of not beat up, but you'll think that you lay it on really thick, and then whenever you go back after a couple seconds and you look at it, it's not nearly as thick as you thought it was. So make sure you kind of go do one nice solid coat on there, let it dry just like maybe even a couple minutes, and then go back and look at it again, and then go hit it again. So I had to come back to it a couple times to just make sure that every little spot was covered. There's a lot of different little creases on here, and again, I did this with both colors. With the first, I did the green. I let it dry for, you know, it probably took about 12 hours to dry, and this is kind of the finished product right here. Put about 12-13 hours to dry completely, and then what I did is I let that dry, and then I sprayed on, I put on all my decals, which my wife made from her Cricut machine. I just found a template online for some camo and used that on there. So this is where I was going to show you actually where I did some of these other things, like you know, making the cutouts for the vinyl to put on there to cover up the green, so that the green will show up as a camo underneath the coyote color. But instead, I actually ended up having a memory card failure that ended up losing some of these things. So basically what I'm going to do is just tell you the process here in this spot. So basically what I did is I went on there, cut it out from the Cricut. You could also do the opposite by making a stencil, by cutting this out of a stencil or something like that, creating a stencil, print it out on a piece of paper or something like that, and then tape the paper to the bow. But basically what I did is I ended up using some vinyl cutouts that were in the shape of little camo patterns, put them on top of the dried green paint, which, by the way, I wish the green I would have done a little bit thicker. In the end, I ended up doing the bee stinger stabilizers, and I did a little bit thicker coat with the 10-to-1 mix on there, and it ended up a lot better. It had a little bit of a gloss to it with that 10-to-1 paint to hardener mixture, but it ended up being very durable, and it looks really good. It's a lot darker color, so I wish I had done, in hindsight, a little bit thicker coat on this, or maybe a second coat of that jungle green on there, but overall it ended up looking good. So put those decals on there, and then I just did the same thing. I sprayed over it with the coyote tan. Once the tan paint had dried completely, then I removed all the stickers and I put it into the oven. And the same thing, to bake it at 300 degrees for 1 hour or 200 degrees for 3 hours. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to our final finished product. This is the Apex Predator Max 33 with the jungle and the coyote pattern on here. So got my little logo on there, made a sticker for that. You can see the camo patterns cut out here. Did a little bit on all of the different parts of the bow. It looks okay. Again, I wish I had done that jungle green a little bit darker, but overall I'm pretty happy with it, guys. Got those black limbs and this coyote look to it as well, but defy the odds going across the front and the back, and it looks good. So I did take this out here and I went on a couple of hunts with it. I did some reviews with the Zinger fletchings with it. So far, guys, it is shooting great. It looks amazing. I couldn't be happier with it. So you see this right here is whenever I had the stabilizer painted with the coyote tan. Previously saw it with the green. But either way, it worked out really well, guys. The whole process putting the bow back together. So far, all the paint's there. I've kind of bumped it around a few times. All the Cerakote staying on the bow and on the stabilizers. Everything's looking good. The bow is shooting great. Again, I took it hunting here, and I really like it, man. I'm super happy with the way this came out. The first time I've ever done it like this. If you ever want to do this or you have any questions, please ask in the comments below. This is a new process for me. I did this one other time to a pistol that I own, but it ended up also working really well. Now that I figured out this mixture, it works really well. I think the best mixture to do, in my opinion, is that 10-to-1 or 12-to-1 mixture. It does give you a little bit shinier coat on there, but it looks a lot more durable. And this is a shot from an upcoming hunt I've got coming, guys, so stay tuned for that video. Appreciate all of you watching, and as always, guys, keep defying the odds.